And the U.S. launching strikes against Iran in response to the downing of an Apache helicopter near the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. military hitting Iranian radar sites and ground control stations. This latest escalation comes as President Trump tells Fox News that he could order more strikes and is getting closer to targeting Iranian power plants and bridges. Joining us now is Senate Majority Leader John Thune. The president's going to sign the Secure America Act at 10 a.m. He might take some questions, so we will go to that. In the meantime, from your perspective on the Republican side of the Senate, would those senators support military action in a more than a proportional response at this point?
I think most Republican senators, Dana, would support the president and our military achieving their objectives. And I don't have the kind of visibility into some of the things there that the war planners do, but I think most Republican senators, at least, believe we need to finish the job and want to support the president to ensure that that gets done. Now, if he can negotiate a deal that is acceptable, that's obviously one way of reaching an outcome. If it's necessary to use additional force to achieve that outcome, I certainly am supportive of that, because I think that we need to ensure that he finishes the job, and that job is to make certain that Iran never possesses or has a nuclear capability.
Okay, and then FISA, that is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. I'm well familiar with it. I know you are too. So it's been under threat of expiring many, many times, but now it actually seems to be happening. And Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is going to the White House today to talk about it. He spoke a little bit on the floor yesterday. Watch here.
You cannot play politics with the security of the American people. I am praying that they come to their senses and that the Senate can work this out and we move forward and we do not let this critical national security tool expire.
So apparently one of the Democrats' big issues is that the acting director of national intelligence right now is Bill Pulte. Do you think the president should pull him?
I think the president probably is in the process, Dana, of determining who the long-term person would be to fill that position. And I think that's going to be an important decision, and one that will probably be determinative in whether or not Democrats support this. But here's the issue. This is an irresponsible position for the Senate Democrats to take. The 702 program. First off, you had, it was the, air control issues. Then it was the border security issues, sanctuary cities. This is a party of defund the police, open borders, sanctuary cities, and now shutting down one of the most important tools we have to keep people in this country safe. And this thing goes dark at midnight on Friday. And what you heard the speaker say yesterday is absolutely right. This is an absolutely irresponsible position for the Democrats to take, and one that puts at risk and in jeopardy the American people if this particular program goes dark.
Are you able to, if there's some resolution today, do you have enough time to prevent it from going dark?
It'd be hard. I mean, the Senate, the procedure on the floor, but if we could get cooperation, yes. I mean, obviously it requires cooperation, but that is the goal, and hopefully the Democrats will come to their senses, because this is, you cannot take these risks.
Especially as the World Cup gets underway. I also wanted to ask you about this, that Bernie Sanders, the senator from Vermont, he's on a bit of a winning streak, trying to get his candidates to be the ones who will go against Republicans in this midterm election. Here's Graham Plattner, who won in Maine last night.
Now, the national pundits, the political establishment, they keep looking for that one story, that one headline, that one moment in my life that they can define the campaign by. But in trying so hard to understand me, they failed to understand that this is not about me at all. This is a movement about us.
Susan Collins won her race 6 years ago by 9 points. Do you think she can as easily dispatch with Graham Plattner?
I do, and I think, Dana, what you just heard, I mean, this is the Democrat Party is defending a misogynist Nazi as their candidate in the Maine Senate election. It is pretty stunning, really, if you think about it, to hear people get up there and defend this person's actions. And yes, it is about him, this election, because if he comes United States Senate, it's going to be about the United States Senate and the future of this country. And what the Democrats insist on doing is continue to nominate people who are so far left. I mean, this party has moved so far left to where the American people are that it's hard even to find a reasonable Democrat to deal with on any issue these days. And I think that's ultimately what this is going to come down to. It's a contrast. It is about differences. And the American people and the people of Maine are going to have a choice on who they elect in these various Senate races around the country and who they want to lead this country. And in my view, at least, the Democrat Party, in many cases, you can take this one, you can take the one in Texas, these are far left candidates, which is why Bernie Sanders is out there endorsing them. There isn't a moderate wing anymore in the Democrat Party.
All right, well, we'll see. We're just a few months away from that midterm. And we thank you for coming on. Hope to see you again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks,
Thank
Dana.
you. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.